so that people could dive into cross-platform application a lot more easier. I mean, they started a little bit of competition with React Native. Now, since you know that people who are coming from web development background, it is easier for them to get into React Native very fast. But it's not in the case for app development, app developers, actually, who are basically coming from native background. And also, it is very easier for people who are starting the development journey because in JavaScript, you'll be what, according to my opinion, you'll see that the code is a little bit cluttered, it's a little bit hard to understand, and things like that. Now, the first thing is Flutter uses a coding language called Dart. Okay. Now, Dart, so basically, people who are coming from a C++ background or a Java background, it is a lot easier for them to get into Flutter because ultimately Google made Dart like such a language that it is basically a mixture of C++ and Java. It is very easy to learn. All right. So when you go into the Flutter application, the applications that you see, I mean, it is basically all the apps that you can make with this framework. All right. I can tell you apps, like a number of apps right now, which are using Flutter because of the sheer amount of optimization it implements and uh, you know how it is still evolving, it is still growing, and the community is becoming really large. And it is, almost the Flutter developers right now in the industry are getting more and more comfortable with Flutter than React Native because it is so easy to learn and it is very easy to understand. The code structure is very easy to understand, among the development community. So in today's session, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm you've already seen like a few apps already. The BMW app that you can actually download from the App Store or Play Store, it uses Flutter. Then Google Pay. Google Pay is the biggest example. Everyone in India right now is using UPI. And what Google did is they first made the native app for Android, then they made a native app for iOS. Then they by combining both the applications, the total number of code of lines, you can also check it up in Google. The total number of code lines they had was 17. Right now, they have reduced it to 12 and 12 million. And by 17, I did not mean only 17. It was 17 million lines of code. Okay. They have reduced it to 12 million uh, lines of code, and they have made it a lot more, optimized. So কি হয় basically যখন লোকেরা এগুলো শোনে কি you can basically reduce the lines of code, you can basically reduce the number of people you employ, like companies when they hear this thing ki toke they don't have to hire two people, one for Android, one for iOS. They have to hire only one person for doing the whole job. Companies tend to hire more people. That's why Flutter has come into the industry so fast because companies are preferring it more now because it has become so easier to make cross-platform applications from a single developer only. And it's not just Android and iOS. Flutter is now extended to Windows app, Mac OS app, Linux app, and web applications also. So ভাবতে পারছি যে ফ্লাটার কতটা ইভলভ করেছে। ফার্স্টে শুধু অ্যান্ড্রয়েড আর iOS ছিল। Now they've increased to Windows app and macOS apps too. So today I'm just going to teach you guys like how you can actually run Flutter on an Android app or run it on uh, an iOS app. Sorry, I think my screen sharing went off. It's visible again, right? Okay, Rubul, I'm sorry. So, don't worry, I'll speak in English and Hindi. You don't need to worry about that. I won't use Bengali. I don't want anyone getting, uncomfortable in this session. So, all right. So, the first thing is, before I go into the next step, the next thing that I'm going to teach you guys is just some basics about Dart, like how you can get started into Flutter. Like before even learning a framework, you guys need to learn about the language, right? मतलब हट से तो तुम लोग React JS start नहीं करोगे, right? उसके पहले you need to learn JavaScript. Similarly, it comes to Android also. You need to learn Kotlin first, then you get into Android development. Now, in Flutter also, before getting deep into the framework, I want to talk a little about the language as well. The language which we all know as Dart, developed by Google. Okay, so before I start, I want you guys to unmute your mic. If you guys have any questions, like why should you get into Flutter and things like that, I'm going to give you a few seconds. If anyone wants to, unmute the mic and ask me any questions, you guys can go ahead. Like, is there anyone, or if anyone like doesn't have any question, you guys can just write in the chat that it's okay, you've understood everything so far and things like that, and I can proceed with the Dart part of the session. You guys can write in the chat also. Everyone understood everything that I'm saying, right? Bengali. Bruv, I I'm a Bengali, so you don't need to worry about that. So far, it's all clear, right? Okay. I think nobody over here has any more question right now. So everyone is comfortable with me proceeding with Dart. Like I'll teach you guys a small thing about that. All right, all right, all right. I think I should proceed with it now. All right. So the first thing that I'm going to come over is the Dart programming language. So like before sharing the coding over here, I'm going to stop presenting my screen over here, and I am going to present my screen on my tab, and I'm going to write a few things first before like telling you about Dart. All right, so just wait for a few moments. Yep, my tab is okay. All right, yeah. So first things first. Now Dart. Okay, let's start with it. So before you start learning Flutter, you have to get into knowing Dart first. Now, just be very like it's very easy. So Dart is basically a mixture of C++ and Java. It has the flexibility and the compilation speed of C++, and it has all the methods that you can find. By methods, if someone is coming from C++ background, I just want to make it sure that methods का मतलब है functions. Okay. So C++ में जो तुम लोग functions बोलते हो, that thing is called methods in Java and other programming languages as well. So you can find almost all the methods similar in like with Java. So both of these are used in making the logic. Like logic contains all the APIs and stuff like that. I might get into a little bit of API as well in today's session. And apart from that, logic तो तुम लोग को पता ही है क्या क्या देना पड़ेगा. Because if you're thinking of making a calculator app, you cannot just make the UI of the app and basically create the whole thing. So ultimately, uh, like just please raise your hand, guys. Anyone who's coming from an Android development background, just raise your hands. I want to know. Is there anyone over here who's coming from an Android background, like has done a little bit of Android development and things like that? Okay, Chayan, you are from an Android background, right? Chayan, are you able to hear me? Hello. I'm audible, right, Suchana?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay, okay. Guys, come on, don't be shy. You guys can raise your hand. I mean, okay, so I want everyone right now, before I proceed, to write down what kind of background are they coming from. And it's absolutely fine also if you guys haven't done any kind of development, you guys are doing CP, competitive programming, or things like that, or if you have no experience as well. I want you guys to write down in the chat what kind of experience you guys have. Okay. Thank you, Nilanjan. You've started experience. Devanjan, you have no experience. Is absolutely fine. It's like really appreciate the fact that you're starting with Flutter. And I am going to make it sure by the end of the session that Flutter is one of the best frameworks that you can get started with, even before native development as well. Okay, Subrata, you're learning DSA. Trisha, you're learning UI and UX design. Oh, it's an amazing thing that you're learning UI and UX. And Flutter, I would say that it's one of the best friends of UI and UX designing because it's very easy to implement mobile app UIs into Flutter. And so, brother, you're learning DSA. That's also amazing as well because there are going to be lots of DSA components in Flutter as well. Not Flutter, actually, to be very honest, in Dart. And inside Dart, there are lots of data structures which you are going to use. And anyone else, like guys, you can write down what experience you guys have. Okay, Chen said you don't have any experience in using Flutter, you're learning web development. All right, that's not an issue as well. But do remember that Flutter also has a web development part. So if you're learning web development using React.js or any other framework like Angular and things like that, I've also worked in Angular a lot. I do my backend development using Nest.js, guys, and like it is very easy to integrate, the APIs and the other stuff into Flutter very easily. Okay, Rubul, you do web development. Okay, no, not actually. Now what? Now let me make one thing clear. You could have asked me this question earlier also. Now, what you are saying over here is Flutter needs some high specs hardware. It is not true for Flutter. Flutter can run very easily. What you're saying is running Android Studio on a low spec computer is hard. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Nilanjan. Yeah, exactly. Android Studio is very hard. I know. It's hard to, by hard, I mean, it's hard to run in a low spec computer. But what you can do is actually, you can run Flutter on a web development. Like, come on, if you're getting into app development, you need to run Android Studio. And if you have a Mac, you don't need to worry about it and things like that. But yeah, if you're getting into app development, you need to adjust a little bit with it because Android Studio, trust me, none of the developers I worked with like Android Studio because it's such a heavy application. But the thing is, what you can do is you can run the app, the Flutter app basically. You can run the Flutter app on web. Now hear me out on this. It's an amazing thing that you can do. You can run it on web. It doesn't require any kind of, high RAMs and things like that. And in web, render it. There's an option where you can go to inspect elements, then you can choose what device you want to run it on. You can choose, Android and things about that. And then you can render it on a mobile app, mobile viewport, and you can basically see how your app looks from a mobile perspective. And in the end, when everything is done, you can basically make the Android or the iOS version of it. Okay, Nilanjan is talking how about Flutter Flow. Now, Flutter Flow, yes. Flutter Flow is a no code. Basically, I won't say no code, it gives you the code for it. Flutter Flow. Now, the thing is, if you use Flutter Flow, you're going to miss out a lot of things that Flutter has deep within it, which Flutter Flow doesn't allow you to, experience and things like that. Flutter Flow is a thing where you can drag and drop certain elements into the UI and then it gives you a code. But the thing is, the code in which you get in Flutter Flow is lot of repetitive code. It's a lot of repetitive code, and trust me, if you use repetitive code in the industry, people are going to, you know, basically tell you to make it more optimized and things like that. So Flutterflow is usually good for very small and lightweighted applications. You can basically drag and drop. For people who doesn't who don't want to, hire freelancers and things like that and want to do things on their own. But yeah, if you actually want to get into the coding part, I would say leave Flutterflow for now. You read the documentations, you go watch YouTube videos. And from my experience, I think the best tutorial that you would get is from the Flutter website only, where there is a part where you can learn and it has lots of things. And I think, yeah, you can actually follow certain YouTube videos, but apart from that, I would rather say go with the documentations. Anyway, let's move on. Now, before I start Dart, I told you that Dart has a mixture of C++ as well as Java. Now, first of all, it is very easy. So it has all the conditions, the loops, uh, the data types, and everything, just like it is done in C++ and Java only. Okay. You know, the for loops, the while loops, and everything, the if else conditions and everything, just like C++, just like Java, and things like that. Rather, in Java, you have to write a lot of code, but not in Dart. Dart is very easy, like even easier than writing C++ data. Now, this is done, and all the methods that I said, all the methods that you are going to, get into Dart, they are basically as similar to all the methods that you get into Java as well. All right. So this is the main thing about that. So now let me share my screen from my computer.
Just a
Just a
sec.
sec.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So let
So let
me.
me, yeah. So let me start sharing my screen over here. Okay, it's visible, right, guys? Sichana, it's visible, right? I
Yes.
think it is. Yeah. Okay. Someone asked question or anything? Okay, Devanjan said yes. All right. So if you guys want to learn about Dart, you can go into the Flutter website. You can see all lots of documentation in it. And just like let's say you want to run just pure Dart and you're confused how to run it on VS Code and things like that. You don't need that. You just go into this website called dartpad.dev. It's a website created by Google only, which is a playground where you can, write Dart codes and Flutter codes as well. So over here, you can see that like every programming language, there is a main function which is the entry point into the application or into the whole code as well. So basically, first I'm going to talk about all the data types that you can use in Dart. All right. Uh, so there is int, there is double. Int is basically any number that you can use. Double is basically any floating point numbers that you can use. Then after int and double comes string. We do not use char over here, char. By char, I mean single characters which are used in C++ or in Java. We do not use that. What we use is we basically use string as an array of chars over here. And if you want to access only a single letter, we use indexing inside the string. It's easy as that. In int, double, string, then there are like almost like different kinds of things like we use hash tables in map, then we use arrays like list. And let's say you want to make a list of, let's say you want to make an array of integers only. So what we would do is we would create a list, then we would create then we would create basically a type of it, and then we would use it. I'll come to it right now. And there are lots and lots of data types in it also. But trust me, these five data types are the only data types that you need to get started into Flutter application development. That's why I mentioned only these three. So let me start saying, let's say I want to make an integer a, 5, and then I want to make an integer b, 6. You guys know, and printing is also very easy over here. You would just write print a plus b, and if you run it, you're going to see the output on the right side. This is what integers are. Okay. So let's say after integer, I want to make a double. Now, you know what doubles are? You can basically write doubles as decimal numbers, which we know in, normal mathematics. And if you now print it, you guys can see that decimals work like that. Now there's a small thing over here. So let's say you're using an integer and a decimal together. What if you print these two together? Okay. What's going to happen is going to convert the whole thing into a double, because in Dart or in any other languages, double is given a high precedence over integer. All right. This was basically int and double. Now let me talk a little bit about string. So let's say I make a string called Flutter. All right. So strings are basically words or sentences that you can keep within single quotes as well or double quotes as well. It's not like C++ that you have to keep a string into double quotes only. You can keep them in single quotes, because in C++, single quotes are used for characters only, but there is no car in Flutter. So that is what st. Now, if I want to print the whole word, I would print out the whole string. And let's say I want to print out the first character of it, then I would do indexing. And then, just like in any coding language, indexing starts from zero, guys. So just remember that. So that was a string. And like after showing you guys a little bit about Dart, I'm going to basically start showing you how I install Flutter and how I implement UIs into Flutter. Then I'm going to insert logic in it as well. Okay. So string is done. Now let's get into arrays. Okay. So let's say I want to make an array of integers. All right. So I would make a list of int. Like for example, in C++, you would do something like this, right? Like I come from a C++ background as well. So you would make one, two, three, dot, 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 dot. You would make an array like this. Trust me, it is really similar like in Flutter as well. And in Flutter, uh, like arrays are actually in C++ known as, you cannot change the size of it and things like that. The thing, the similar data type like array in C++ is vector, which is dynamic, right? You can actually push things into it. So let's work basically like that only, vectors. You can add, you can remove certain elements from it. So that's why, lists are very easier to use inside an applications. So let's say I'm making an integer list. Okay. So I'm going to make it named A, and I'm going to basically add some numbers in it. All right. Now let's say I want to print A. What is it that the thing that is going to get printed is the whole array at once. And if I want to, let's wait for the output. Yeah, there we are. And if we want to, let's say, only print the third element of it, we're going to do 2 because it's zero indexed. And it's easy like that only. All right. So this is basically how lists work in Flutter. After that, let's say I want to make, now I don't want to make a list of, integers. I want to make a list of string. And there we go, Flutter, and then say some rad. So now if I print A, you're going to see that all the words are going to get printed in a string, in a basically list of string. Now I want to print Flutter inside the list. So what I'm going to do, it's since it's the second element, I'm going to use indexing and I'm going to run it. Now that's Flutter. Now it's going to show you Flutter. Now let's say I want to output just the R of the Flutter. So what I'm going to do is basically when you we all know that string is basically a list of characters. So what Flutter does is it makes the whole thing into the list of string into a basically a 2D matrix kind of thing. So now if I press, let's count it. Okay, it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, now I want to print the sixth character of the first word inside the array. Now, if I run it, you're going to see R over here. That's how easy, lists are in Flutter. So now I talked a little bit about data structures as well over here. I'm not going to get into maps right now. Does anyone have any question about the data types? Because it's very easy. It's similar to C++ and Java. Does anyone have any issue understanding things? You guys can basically write it in chat over here. Anyone having any problems? You guys can write it over here. Okay. I think no one is having any problem as well. All right. Okay. And tell me, guys, am I going really fast? If I'm going really fast, you guys can actually unmute your mic and tell me. I'm going to like stop and make you understand the things properly. I guess I'm going at the correct space. No one is saying anything. So let's go along with it. Okay. So now I'm going to get into a little bit of conditions and loops. After that, we are going to start the main thing. All right. So, conditions, it's just similar like the one in C++ and Java. You use if, else if, and else. All right. So let's say my age is 18. Then I could just all the operators that we use in C++ and any other languages. It's similar in Dart as well. The ternary operations, the normal mathematical operations, the mm, after that you get small other operators that you get to see in other languages. It is similar in Dart as well. So let's say my age is 18, not is equal to 18. I would rather say it is greater than 18. Then I would say that it's I'm going to print adult, else I'm going to print, you know, teenager or something like that. All right. So conditions are really easy like that. You can see that since the age is greater than or equal to 18. Now, if I change it to 12, of course, it's going to say that I'm a teenager. All right. Same thing goes with string and everything inside conditions. So I'm just going a little bit faster with the Dart coding language because I actually want to, dive deeper into the Flutter part because that's the most interesting thing. So this was just a small condition that I showed you guys because I'm going to use this condition in the app that I'm going to make. All right. So that was it for the condition. Now let's get a little bit into loops as well. Okay. For loop, trust me, guys, for loop is similar like Java or C++. It is so similar that you cannot find any difference in it. So let's say I want to print all the numbers from 1 to 10, right? So what we would do in C++, we would do something like for int I equal to 1, then we would give the, condition that I has to be less than or equal to 10, and then we would give the number of increment or decrement or whatever operation we want to make with I, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to write I plus plus. And trust me, guys, like whenever I see this thing, it reminds me of C plus plus. It is so much similar to that. Like Google made it so similar to C plus plus and Java just because of the fact that it is easier for, starting developers to get, uh, into Dart language very easily. So what I'm now going to do is I was just going, I'm not going to lie, I was going to write this right now because I've also come from C++ background and it has become like very, you know, common for me to write C out over here. Anyway, so I'm going to print I for every iterations and you're going to see 1 to 10. Yeah, just like that. And just like that, we have covered the topmost part of Dart right now because these are the things that we are going to require when we use Flutter for basic applications. All right. Now, excuse me. Now, when we get into a little bit of more complicated areas of Flutter, and by complicated I mean implementing APIs and things like that. That is where map comes in. All right. So map is basically like hash maps in Java, or it is what you call dictionaries in Python. Basically, has a key and value pair. I'm not going to talk about it right now. You guys can look it up into the Flutter, documentations because we have a little bit more than 1 hour right now. So now I'm going to dive deeper into the Flutter framework. Okay, so before starting into that, anyone has any questions or something like that, like about Dart? Anyone has any questions about Dart? You guys can shoot the questions at me. So tell me, is it easier the like people who are coming from web development part like background, is JavaScript easier for you guys, or do you think that is a little bit more easier? I mean, from what you have seen over here. Exactly, that is easier. It is a lot more easier. Like I also started web development, like front end web development. I do back end development now also. But when I started front end development, JavaScript, for me, it is an amazing language. But understanding the coding structure of it is a bit difficult for someone who's coming from, C++ plus plus or a Java background. So that's why I would suggest you guys that if you guys actually want to get into full stack development, Flutter is an amazing place to start with. Yeah. Okay. So now let's start with Flutter. All right. So if you guys actually want to install Flutter in your uh, device, you can actually go into, you can just type Flutter install, and they're going to give you proper documentation as to how to install Flutter in your device. And like, let's be honest, guys, Google is so developer friendly that they have even released Flutter from Chrome OS as well. I just got to know about it a few days ago. Anyway, like I think most of the peeps over here are from the Windows background. So let's say you go over here, it's going to tell you what kind of recommendations you need. Now, I know you need minimum of 8 GB RAM. I know, but you can also, do development with 4 GB RAM as well. Do not worry about that. It's just also, who was the guy who told me that Flutter is a little bit, needs some high speed? Yeah, Nilanjan. Let me make another thing clear. You can actually use Flutter easily as well. For the first time, it might get a little bit laggy because of Android Studio. You know that. But after you set up Flutter, the thing is, you can actually use your own Android device with your laptop and run the Flutter application on your Android device. You don't need to run any kind of emulator for that. It becomes so easy and becomes so faster. Trust me, me and my other fellow developer colleagues, we use Flutter in our office. We do not use emulators, okay, because in Mac, we are using MacBooks, okay. It's one of the most powerful devices out there in the industry. Still, it lags. Because of what? Because of Android Studio. Okay, Android Studio is such a heavy software that it lags in MacBooks as well. That's why we tend to use our own devices. Like I've got my own Android device, which I use for testing all the Flutter applications in my office. All of my fellow developer colleagues do that as well. So yeah, it is one of the better things that you use your own device instead of an emulator, so that you can start, uh, you know, getting into Flutter more easier. Like you don't have to worry about any lagging or any things like that, or any kind of malfunctions like that. Okay. So you can see all the things as to how to use Flutter. Okay. Now let's say you are using Android Studio as an IDE, or an editor for your Flutter code. Don't do it, guys. Trust me, use VS Code. VS Code is such a light application, and it's going to help you out a lot because it has lots of extensions. It is very lightweighted, 10 times lighter than Android Studio. Trust me, you start using VS Code today and you're going to be happier for the rest of your life. Not for the rest of your life, your development career. Okay, VS Code is that much better. And it has basically, it has it written over here that you can use Android Studio or IntelliJ IDEA, but I would always say that VS Code is the go-to IDE for Flutter development. All right. So there are instructions on how to install Flutter over here. Just follow this guide blindly, and it will become really easier for you guys to install Flutter on your device. Now, after you install Flutter, you guys can go into your PowerShell, what do you say, PowerShell terminal on Windows. I also started Flutter development on Windows as well. Now I have transferred over into macOS. But after you have installed Flutter, you have followed all these instructions. What you can do is you can run your terminal, and it's going to tell you a very helpful and very common command that you guys are going to come around. That is Flutter Doctor. Okay, remember this command, guys. When you run Flutter Doctor in your environment terminal, what you are going to see is Flutter, which is the Flutter framework, which is installed in your system. It is going to tell you what are the things that you require and what are the things that need to be installed as well. So when people install Flutter, initially, they are going to see things like Android Studio में cross रहेगा, Chrome में cross रहेगा, VS Code में cross रहेगा. So basically, Flutter telling you that you need to install these things so that you can, run a Flutter application. Now, guys, come on. You need to install Android Studio to install the ADB files, the things which are required to run an Android application on an emulator or on a device on your computer. So you need to bear with it, installing Android Studio into the initial stages. Khushi Soumya raised their hand. Okay, yeah, Khushi. You have any question?
Yeah, I wanted to ask that what is an emulator?
Okay, so emulator is basically an instance of a mobile phone which you're running in your system as basically. All right. So I'll show you guys something. Like I'll show you an emulator only. So an emulator actually looks like let's get into one of my, let's say just a sec. Okay, I'll show you what an emulator looks like. Uh,
Samrat Bhaiya,
yes, go ahead.
I've been a little late in joining, but if I'm not wrong, आप last year के GDSC lead थे ना?
Yeah, I was the GDSC app lead in UEM.
Yeah, I just saw the poster, the message actually. I was like, आप थे last year.
Yeah,
जल्दी से I
exactly,
joined the
exactly.
session.
You're from where? You're from UEM?
Yes, UEM के
Okay, yeah. I'm also
second
over
year
there. I'm in
बैच.
fourth year right now, actually.
अच्छा अभी अच्छा.
Yeah, I'm in fourth year. I'll tell you a lot more about myself, like once the session is near its end. Okay,
हाँ
how Flutter has helped me getting into, uh, the industry and things like that. Anyway,
हाँ.
I'll show you what an emulator is. Let's see. Come on. Yep. This is what an emulator looks like. Now, an emulator is just basically an Android device running in my system only, in your operating system. So it's basically an operating system running inside your own operating system. Okay. So this is what an emulator looks like. It actually works a lot like it works totally like an Android device. Similarly, there are iOS emulators as well. And uh, apart from all the things inside an emulator, there's just one thing that you don't get in an emulator, that is a calling facility. You cannot insert a SIM card. Apart from that, everything is similar in it. That's what an emulator is. Okay. So I think I'm clear about what an emulator is. Anyone has any questions right now? You guys can ask me. Okay, I guess no one has any questions. I'm going to make my terminal into full screen. All right. So let's clear the terminal. Okay. So the first command that I taught you was Flutter Doctor. A Flutter Doctor gives you a diagnosis of all the things that you need in your, uh, device, in your laptop or computer for the things that you need to run Flutter. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you guys the most important command of them all, which is Flutter create. All right. The Flutter create is, you guys are able to see my, should I increase the font? Yeah, is it visible now? You guys can see my terminal properly, right? Yep, okay. Okay, now what Flutter Create does is it basically creates a whole Flutter application for you. It creates all the files needed for for running the Flutter application in an Android device, in an iOS device, in a Windows device, in a web development environment, in a macOS device, and in a Linux operating system. It's such a powerful command. Okay. Now what you're going to do is you're going to write the command flutter create, and then you're going to write is what you're going to write is the name of the application which you want, right? So let's say I want to write first app. Okay. Now if I hit enter, you can see what it does. Oh, okay. Sorry, my bad. An application name cannot have a hyphen in it. It needs to have an underscore if you want a space in it. All right. So when you press that, it's going to create a Flutter file for you, and it's really fast. All right. You can already see that it has created the whole file over here. Now, what you're going to see inside there is all the files that are required to run the Flutter application in your system. All right. It has the Android file. It has all the required, files for you to run your Flutter application on Android. iOS for the iOS app. Linux is for the Linux OS app. macOS is for the macOS applications. Web is for the web development application, and Windows is for the Windows application. I mean, Flutter has evolved so much, it can basically create your whole application from a single code base into all these six operating systems. Just look at the level of like scalability your application can have if you use Flutter. All right, now we have created the whole thing. Now let's open the file in VS Code. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get into now there are certain commands that you're going to see me using in the terminal like cd, ls, and things like that. These are basic commands that you get to use in Windows PowerShell terminal and as well as in macOS terminal and Linux terminal as well. These are basic commands that you guys use to get into directories, list all the files in the directories. It becomes a lot more easier. Like I'm a person who doesn't use GUI, the graphical user interface a lot. I use terminal a lot. I don't use GitHub desktop. I use GitHub on terminal only. So that's why I'm using terminal a lot over here. So anyway, we're going to get into now in the desktop. If I'm going to press ls, I'm going to see that there is my first app over here. And let's get into the first app. And if I press ls, I can see all the files and folders that are inside the uh, main folder. So now I want to code inside it. I'm going to open the whole code over here. I'm going to keep the emulator on this side so that it is visible for you guys. The application. I'm going to open the code over here. I'm going to increase my font. I get a lot of gali and all things in my office because I use very small font. So just bear with it for a few seconds. All right, so let me increase the font. Yeah. So are you guys able to see everything in the VS Code that I'm sharing? I'm keeping a check on my tab as well so that it's easier for you guys also to see everything. Okay. All right. So anyone has a question on how to install Flutter and installation part of the Flutter? You guys can go ahead and ask me questions. I don't think anyone has it because it's really easy. No one has any questions, so I'm going to move forward with it.
There are some questions in the chat box.
Oh, I'm so sorry, guys. I missed it. Okay, let's see. That is easier. That seems to be easier. Can a Windows have? No, I'm so sorry, Shinjin. You need to have, like, Apple is a really evil company. Trust me. They have made it very hard for other developers, Linux and Windows developers to use Apple related stuff in Windows applications. So, yes, you need to use a macOS device for running iOS applications, because running iOS or macOS applications, you need Xcode, which is the IDE which Apple uses for its native application development. And to run any kind of app or macOS applications, you need to first register it. And to register it, you can only do it through Xcode. I know Apple is a very evil organization. Anyway, we're still using it because it is one of the best operating systems out there. But yeah, I'm sorry, you will have to use a macOS device. But anyway, with Windows, you can even make the Android app, you can make the web app, and you can make the Windows app. So, and like similarly, to make the Linux app, you need to run the Flutter application on a Linux operating system first, or else you won't be able to actually, run the Linux application of it. And Audithropol said, "Can I use Android Studio?" Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can use Android Studio. I just said VS Code because, uh, come on, at a stage, we all have used Android Studio, and we all know how much of a, you know, pain in the butt it is to use Android Studio, because Android Studio
अरे
is
और
a very heavy application. That's why I said VS Code is an amazing choice for getting into a first ID. VS Code is an amazing choice for a first ID. Like anyway, other than Flutter, there are lots of extensions that you can run into that you can actually install in VS Code, so that you can make everything a lot more prettier, a lot more easier, and things like that. Yeah, Kushi, go on ahead.
Via, I wanted to
Thank
ask कि despite this being a Flutter session, I
Yeah,
wanted to
yeah.
ask कि like React Native को prefer क्यों ना करे, क्योंकि मतलब मैं थोड़ा confused हूँ अभी. I have not
Yeah, yeah,
gone
yeah,
into
yeah.
Android development.
Yeah, I
So
actually
like
covered
is
this
it
part in the beginning. No worries. I can tell
okay?
you. I can tell you why not React Native and why Flutter. Okay.
you.
So
Game
I'm going to get into this thing again. Now Flutter. So uh, let's make it interactive. Kushi, can you unmute your mic? Yeah,
हाँ.
yeah. All right.
iPad में
So tell me, React Native uses what language? Do you know that? It uses JavaScript, right?
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it uses JavaScript, and Flutter uses a language called Dart. Now, yeah,
Yeah.
if you're coming from a web development background, React Native is definitely, you would think that React Native is would be easier for me to understand. But there are lots of people who are coming from C++ and Java background as well as native application development. So,
Native
Flutter
application development मतलब क्या हुआ?
नेटिव मतलब है व्हाट यू आर यूजिंग Kotlin and Android Studio, मतलब एंड्रॉयड जिस जो लैंग्वेज के लिए बना था उस यू आर यूजिंग दैट पार्ट टू
यानी कि
डेवलप
Kotlin,
एप्लीकेशन.
जैसे आपने बोला Kotlin, वो native हुआ?
Yeah, using Kotlin in Android Studio to make Android applications, that is a native framework. Or using Swift in Xcode to build iOS application, that is also native.
Hmm.
What Flutter does is it brings a single code base into different platforms, into different operating systems. That's why it is called a cross-platform application. And
Yes.
Kotlin and Swift and things like that, they are called native frameworks. All right.
Okay, understood. Hmm.
Yeah. And now the main difference is if you run a React Native app,
Hmm.
it is still going to cause you a lot of performance issues now as well. Like you're going to hear lots and lots of complaints in the community. I'm not saying that it is a bad framework. Lots of applications use React Native, but
Hmm.
Google has made Flutter into such a scalable, highly scalable coding language, a framework,
Hmm.
that it is becoming easier for companies to basically hire a single developer instead of hiring five different developers to make the application for five different operating systems. Instead, what they can do is they can hire only one developer to create applications over all the operating systems, starting from Android, iOS, Windows, macOS, Linux, and web. There are six operating systems for that. Okay, for Flutter. So definitely, companies के लिए तो वो it's going to be cheap and they want to make
Hmm.
money faster. And Flutter is easier to develop the application faster as well. So that's why
Hmm.
Flutter अभी ज़्यादा लोग prefer कर रहे हैं. And also another thing that I would like to say is I'm going to name three applications right now which are using Flutter. First is Alibaba. Okay, Alibaba, the
Oh.
biggest, supplier chain wala jo application hai world
Hmm.
mein, they are using Flutter. Now let's come to Google. You are using GPay every day. Come on, UPI. ठीक है. GPay
Yes.
is now fully running on Flutter. Okay. GPay तुम जो use कर रहे हो, it earlier
Hmm.
used to run in native languages. Now it is running on Flutter. And another thing is, if you go into Gmaps ka website, Google Maps ka website, or
Hmm.
even if you use the Google Map ka app, it is being run in Flutter. The whole rendering of the world map, rendering of cities and everything, that is being done in Flutter. They have transitioned into Flutter because right now, it has such huge performance differences with other languages that people are, basically migrating into Flutter because it has given them amazing results. That's why, Flutter is a thing which you should look forward to as one of your first frameworks. Okay. Like,
Okay.
ज्यादातर लोग सोचते हैं कि to get into Flutter development you need to learn Android first, या iOS first, या web development first. That is totally not true. Okay, you guys can start with Flutter as your first framework. थोड़ा सा coding language का अगर रहेगा तो it will become a lot more easier.
तो
Okay,
उससे पहले
got it,
मुझे
Khushi?
डार्ट सीखना होगा है ना?
Sorry, I didn't get you.
उससे उससे पहले डार्ट सीखना होगा ना, डार्ट लैंग्वेज?
Dart is very easy. That's why I said, na, ki if you're coming from a C++ or a Java background, Dart is basically a mixture of C++ and Java. So it becomes a lot more easier for developers to understand the language.
ओके, थैंक
All
यू।
right. Yeah. 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 Cool. Okay. So next is Orithropol. I covered your question. Yeah, Orithropol, Google Assistant 2. It's running on Flutter as well. Okay. Rubble, which framework is used by Google to make their web apps? Google uses Angular JS till date for making their web applications. But like I said, they're migrating into Flutter. Google Maps भी I think Angular में बना था, but अभी तो वो Flutter में आ गया. And now they're transitioning their whole plethora of applications into Flutter. Is its efficiency same as other platform? Devanjan, I can assure you. Once you start using Flutter, you are going to forget everything because it has brought such a huge performance difference among other applications. Okay, okay. So I'm really happy you guys asking these questions. It's making it more interesting. Okay, anyway, let's get into Flutter development. All right. So it's 7:04 right now. So what I'm going to do right now, guys, is I'm going to dive a little bit into, uh, how we can actually make a Flutter app, and we are going to make a small calculator app ताकि मैं तुम लोग को दिखा दे. I can like show you guys how much easier it is to make a calculator app in Flutter. Okay, so just give me one moment. I'll get started. I'll just look for a very simple UI. I'll share it to you guys. Don't worry about that. I just have it somewhere here only. Yep, got it.
समझा भैया।
Yeah, yeah, go on ahead.
और 2-3 दिन से मुझे एक बहुत सिली सा क्वेश्चन है, जैसे कि वेब डेवलपमेंट में फॉर द फ्रंट एंड
No question
डिजाइनिंग
is
पार्ट।
silly. Okay, just go
ना ना
on
ना
with
ना,
it.
अच्छा अच्छा।
Yeah,
नहीं,
yeah,
ये
bolo.
जनरली मुझे कुछ दिनों से परेशान करे और मैं किसी से पूछ नहीं पा रही हूँ बिकॉज कोई एंड्रॉइड डेव मैं जानती नहीं हूँ। तो
Okay, okay, go ahead.
जैसे
Yeah.
कि वेब डेवलपमेंट में हम जो बात करते हैं कि जो वेबसाइट होता है पहले उसकी डिजाइन होती है और उस डिजाइन को हम लोग यूआई यूएक्स डिजाइनिंग कहते हैं। मतलब
Yep.
मेरा कहने का ये मतलब है कि जो एंड्रॉइड ऐप का जो डिजाइन होता है उसे भी यूआई यूएक्स ही कहेंगे या फिर उसके लिए कोई दूसरा
Yeah,
वर्ड
yeah,
यूज
yeah.
होता है?
Any design that you see, web development का जो भी design है. Okay, I was using my Windows app, so my Windows device. Let's get over here only and show you guys. So let's say now one of the main things that I'm going to show you guys right now before getting into the development part is, let's say तुम लोग Flutter सीख गए. Now after that, how are you going to get into companies for internships and jobs? You guys need to make projects first, right? Projects
हम्म।
का idea तुम्हारे पास है. Now design कहाँ से मिलेगा? Dribble is one of the platforms where you can get the UI UX designs. So let's say I want to make a calculator app. I'm going to go over there. I'm going to write calculator app. And it's going to show me lots of like designs, like a plethora of designs. जिसे हम reference लेके we can make the calculator app. Okay. So these
इसे
things
लेके
will.
इसे लेके फिग्मा पे रिक्रिएट करना होता है ना, और फिर जो उसमें आता
Why
है फिर उसे
recreate? You
लेके
are the
जाते हैं।
developer. You are the developer. You can just take one of these UIs and make it. The UI you अगर if you want to make an application, तुम्हारे पास vision है कि app कैसे दिखेगा, then you make it in Figma UI and UX. But if you're making an application just for your own practice, or uh, adding the project in your CV, then you can just pick a random UI from Dribble and you can make the whole application and get into it. It's that easy.
हम्म,
Okay.
हाँ।
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the iOS calculator app. Okay. So I'm going to write iOS calculator app UI. I'm going to go into images, and this is the UI. Okay. I'm going to copy this image, not the image. I'm going to copy the image address. I'm just going to paste it over here so that you guys can refer to it later on. And anyway, after this, what I'm going to do, I'm going to put the whole project that I'm going to make in front of you, in not in front of you, I'm sorry, in GitHub, so that you guys can actually refer to it later on, and you guys can start getting into Flutter as well. So yes, uh, this is the small app that I'm going to make. Now see, Flutter is so easy that starting developers might think कि ये तो इतना complicated है, इतना button से कैसे करेंगे. But I'm saying that it is a very easier app because Flutter has made everything a lot more easier for developers. Okay, we're going to make the small calculator app. All right. So I made the whole thing over here. Now let's get into the whole document structure of your Flutter application. So what you're going to do is when you first run your Flutter application, you're going to get into lib. All right. Lib mein, you guys will see that there is a file called main.dat, which has all the code, like not main.dat, which like I'm talking about lib. Lib folder ke andar, you guys have to place all your code. All right. Uske bahar, you guys won't have to keep it. Now you can see that Flutter uses a lot of, what I would say, it uses a lot of components inside that applications. We are going to come across it. We are going to call them columns. We're going to call them rows. We're going to call them containers. So basically in this tutorial, which I'm going to show you guys, the small calculator app for a tutorial, there are only 5 to 6 widgets that I'm going to show you guys, and I'm going to talk also in between, like what are widgets and how they are useful to us. After making the whole application, like I'm going to make the application really faster. I'm going to code it faster. Okay, just like the way we coded in industry. And after that, I'm going to talk a little bit about state management. Okay, state management. It might seem like a small topic, but trust me, state management may you guys have to put in a lot of effort because state management is a thing which is, one of the main components of your whole application. It helps you to make large scale applications, and companies will hire you more if you have a better understanding of state management. All right. So let's start with the application. So when you get into this application, you guys will think कि इतना सारा कोड लिखा है, what how should I understand it? ठीक है. Try to understand it line by line, and Flutter already makes a counter app for you. So what you're going to do is you're going to open main.dat and you're just going to go into the run and debug part. Android Studio में ऊपर इधर run का एक बटन रहता है. You guys can press it. Over here you just need to press run and debug. And be careful, you guys need to choose which application is which device is over here. This is the name of the emulator which is running on the side of the screen, so I'm going to select that, and then I'm going to press on run and debug. Now Flutter thoda sa time leta hai to run in the emulator. Anyway, after this you guys are going to see an already built app. Okay, so Flutter वो create करके देता है. उसके पहले मैं बोल देता हूँ One of the most important things in Flutter, all the UI elements that you guys are going to see in a Flutter application is called a widget. Android में क्या होता है? You guys write the logic in Kotlin and then you make the UI in XML. Okay. So anyone who's not from the Android background, it's absolutely fine. So you basically use two different small coding languages for making them. Okay. And in web development, you guys have to make the logic in JavaScript and you have to basically create the UI of the app in CSS, right? So if you actually look into the whole thing, ज़्यादातर framework में in the front end frameworks there are more, like most of the times there are two different languages in the place, you know, one for the logic, one for the UI, because they have made the languages such that एक लैंग्वेज बनाते हैं पूरा लॉजिक बेस्ड होके and एक लैंग्वेज बनाता है सिर्फ यूआई एलिमेंट्स, then they combine it and then they give you the application. That's not the case of Flutter. They give you the whole thing at once. Okay, so you guys can write the UI and the logic in the same page as well. मैं भी तुम लोग को बोल रहा हूँ, but later on do not follow this. You have to create different architectures and things like that. I won't get into those advanced topics right now because it's a lot more complicated. You guys will get to know more about it the more you dive into Flutter. Okay, so now our app is running. You guys can see it over here. So inside the app, you can see that Flutter has already made us an application, a counter application, if you would say. So there is a floating button over here, and there is a number over here. And doesn't matter how many times you press on this button, the plus button is going to increase the counter. So let's dive a little bit into the Flutter code. Okay. So at the top of the main file, you can see that there is the main method, which we also saw in the Dartpad. Okay, it is the entry point of the app. It's not actually entry point. Main is the function. The entry point of the app is run app. All right. Now run app ke andar there is the name of your main application class. Okay. Now do make I want to make something very clear. Flutter is a fully object-oriented programming language. Okay, a framework. Sorry, it uses classes a lot. Okay, so it's okay if you don't know about object-oriented programming that much when you start into Flutter, because normal classes ही use होगा. But once you get, you know, into the intermediate and the advanced part of Flutter, I would highly suggest that you guys understand inheritance and polymorphism of classes, like how they work. Okay, because when you get into companies, you have to use them a lot into the architectures of the code bases. And if you don't have a clear concept of them, then it's going to become really difficult for you to understand it. Okay, so स्टार्ट करने के पहले थोड़ा थोड़ा देख लेना कि व्हाट इज इनहेरिटेंस, व्हाट इज पॉलीमॉर्फिज्म. आई एम नॉट सेइंग टू कि फ्लटर का इनहेरिटेंस या पॉलीमॉर्फिज्म देखना है. I just want you guys to understand the concept of it, because if you understand the concept of it, it will be a, you know, piece of cake for you guys to get into the advanced development of Flutter. All right, now let's see our first class, which is the main class of our app. It is called my app. Okay, now it extends something called stateless widget. All right. So in Flutter, you guys are going to come across two main kind of widgets. One widget which we call as stateless, one widget which we call stateful. Stateless widget के अंदर क्या होता है? Let's say stateless widget के अंदर एक text है. Now we will always use a stateless widget when we are sure that that state, that text or a number inside that widget is not going to change at all. And inside the stateful widget, we are going to use every variables and every UI components that we know is going to change. Okay. Now, what do I mean when I say, you know, stateless and stateful and state? Okay. So you can see my app has a stateless widget. It has the app has a title, then it has a color scheme, like iska color diya hua hai, deep purple ऐसा करके. We know that this code is not going to change. That's why it is made into a stateless widget. इसके अंदर कुछ change नहीं होगा. Now a question might arise in you guys is तो मैं stateful widget सब जगह क्यों use नहीं करूंगा? why not use stateful widgets in every place? Like instead of stateless widget. Like stateless widget doesn't make any sense if you start getting into coding language. But trust me, guys, when you actually develop, code into Flutter, you guys are going to see every UI element that you're going to make is ultimately going to get into this function called build. Any kind of widget that you make, it is ultimately going to have a build function. Whenever you run a Flutter app, the build function gets called. And trust me when I say it gets called over and over again, even if a small text gets changed into a stateful widget. And जब ये build call होता रहता है, it kind of reduces the performance a little bit. That's why it is very wise to use stateless widgets as well. Okay, anyone has any questions like stateless and stateful widget के अंदर like differentiate करने में problem हो रहा है? Is there anyone like anyone has any problem understanding things over here right now? You guys can shoot questions at me because I'm going to dive a lot more deeper. I guess no one has any question. So, okay. So yeah, let's get into it. Now you see this is the main entry class for your Flutter app. Then you can see that the Flutter app is now getting into a stateful widget. Now I told you guys कि stateful widget के अंदर वो चीज रहता है जिसका स्टेट चेंज होता है. नाउ बाय स्टेट आई मीन वो जो पहले रहता है बाद में उसका वैल्यू चेंज हो जाता है. एनीथिंग जिसका वैल्यू चेंज हो जाता है हम उसको कोडिंग पर्सपेक्टिव में वी से कि the state of it is going to change. The state of the variable is 1 right now. If we increment it, the state of the variable is going to 2, become 2. Okay, that's what we mean by state. Stateless मतलब कोई भी state change नहीं होगा. Stateful मतलब everything inside it might get changed or even one thing inside it might get changed. So inside the application, you can see that there is an integer called counter and there is a function made which is called increment counter. And whenever we want to change the state of anything inside a Flutter application, we use something called set state. ये set state हम Flutter app को बोलता है कि अब now the state of this variable is going to change. So I want you to render the whole thing once again so that the change gets reflected in that particular variable. So when we press this plus button, this increment counter function gets called. उसके अंदर Flutter वाले क्या देखता है कि set state दिया हुआ है. So Flutter understands कि once that button gets pressed, this counter value has to get incremented, and after it gets incremented, so that it is visible to us in the application, we are going to re-render. Flutter is going to re-render the whole application so that the value gets changed. So as I press plus, Flutter को समझ में आता है there is a set state, which means it has to increment. So back में inside the compiler, what it does is it changes the 13 to 14. अब फ्रंट एंड में वो जब रिफ्लेक्ट करना है, it has to re-render the whole page. Now ये re-render इतना फास्ट होता है that it is invisible to the naked eye. Once the app gets really heavy and all, you'll be able to see कि app थोड़ा lag हो जाता है, थोड़ा ये. That's when the optimization part comes in. We're not going to talk about it now. Now inside the build function of the main thing, we can see, just one second, let me remove all the junk comments that we have over here. Yeah. Inside the whole application, you can see that our application is basically any kind of application that you're going to see in the Flutter development part. They are made inside a widget called scaffold. Because inside a scaffold, you can have an app bar. App bar refers to the top portion of your application. Then body. Body means this whole part, the white part that you can see inside the application. And then there's this floating action button, which is the small button. Because in most of the applications you see, they've made a different part for floating action button because it is one of the main components in most of the applications out there, which you're going to find in Play Store and App Store. Okay. Now let's dive a little bit into the app bar. Now they have given app bar का background color as something, theme के अंदर जो दिया हुआ है. Theme के अंदर we can see that there is a color called deep purple. No, I don't think deep purple is a color that I want right now. What I would rather suggest is let's make it, a little bit yellowish. Okay. So what I'm going to do in Flutter, there is a class called colors, where if we press colors and then we, write a color, it's always going to give you suggestions. You can see it in the documentation as well. When you write that and give it a shade and you press Control S, you're going to see it gets reflected. This is one of the best features of Flutter. It gets updated in real time. This is what we call a hot reload. You can see this thing. So, save and hot reload, what it does is there is a concept in Flutter which is called JIT, just in time compilation. Okay. What happens is, as soon as you make a little bit change in UI and save it, it gets reflected in the UI as soon as possible. It does not re-render the whole application. वो थोड़ा सा चेंज करके सिर्फ वो build function को change करके it renders the whole thing. It's such amazing. Now I want the title में देखो there is a widget called text. Text is a widget जिसके अंदर we write things. So let's say I want to write it over here. I want to write Flutter counter, or let's say Flutter GBSC app. I want to write this. As soon as I save it, it gets reflected. I want the color of it to be white. So text has an attribute, just like in JavaScript or React का components जैसा होता है. इसमें भी widgets के अंदर there are attributes. Okay. It has an attribute called style, which takes in another widget called text style. ठीक है. Now inside text style, let's say I want to set the color as colors.white. Now, as soon as I save it, you can see that the color of it changes. It is so fast. Okay. Now, before getting into body of the scaffold, I want to tell you guys that Flutter app में these widgets, they are actually set to be in a tree, widget tree. Okay. What happens is you can see the structure of it. How one app is a parent, it has children. Those children are parents to other children widgets and things like that. You can see that the whole thing is actually following a very, tree-like structure. Just the right side of a binary tree, if you would say. So that's why everything inside Flutter is set to be inside a widget tree. And there are parents, there are children of the application. So let's get into the body first. You see that there is a widget called center, which centers the everything inside the body part. Now, just as I said, center is a parent, and then center is going to have a child attribute, which takes in another widget. Over here, there is a widget called column. Now, column is a parent to many children. Okay. So column is basically like a div in JavaScript, which has a lot of components in it. And the display of that is kept in flex, and the flex direction is kept as column, is totally similar to that. Okay, so now inside the column, you can see that there are two widgets. Okay, one is the text. You have pushed the button this many times, and I can change it in real time. Like you have to push the buttons, this number of times. I can say that, I can save it, and you can see it getting changed right away. It's so amazing like that. Then inside the text, you can see that we are using the variable. How do we use a variable inside a text widget? We just use a we just use a small dollar in front of it. This dollar inside the quotes tells Flutter इस text widget के अंदर मैं एक variable बिठाने वाला हूँ, and you're going to show the value of the variable, not the text it has. So if we remove the dollar, you guys can see that we are just going to see the word counter. We don't want that, right? We want the variable name which is associated with that, this thing. Now, when we put dollar again, we can see the variable. Another easier thing that you guys can do is you guys can remove the quotes if you just want to, print the variable, and remove these things and use directly the variable name. After that, you call a method which is named as toString and save it. You can see that nothing got changed because it's almost the same. You're basically rendering the variable into a string only. And let's change the color of the 14. Let's change it to colors.green. Okay. Now, one second. My bad. You have to keep it inside a text style and you change it to colors.green. and it got changed. Now it seems a lot more smaller. Let's change the font size of it. Let's change the font size to 40. And yes, it got bigger once again. And in the floating action button, just as I told you, we have a function called increment counter. You can see that floating action button का on press का attribute में that method is kept. Now it is telling, now this floating, we are telling the floating action button कि इसका on press जो होगा, you have to call this one on it. Tooltip में क्या होगा? If you hover, actually in Windows or web app, if you hold it or hover it, you can see it is going to tell you a small instruction. That is what we know as tooltip. And child mein, you can see that there is another widget called icon, which basically helps us a lot to, put material icons. And by material, I mean the UI elements that Google has made for its UI elements in the websites and apps. We call it material. It helps you to add material icons in the application. Instead of icons.add, I can use an icon called icon.info. If you use, you know, control space, you can actually see in VS Code, definitely, you can see what kind of icon there is. So let's say I want to add a random icon like this called medical information rounded. Never used it. Anyway, I'm going to add it. Once I save it, you can see that that icon has come over here. I want to change the color of that icon. Not an issue. I'm going to use the color attribute of icons. I'm going to say I want it white, and it is done. Now I want to change the color of the floating action button. That is also not an issue. I will use the background color attribute of floating action button. I'm going to say I want the color of it to be colors.black. There you go. Flutter is that easy. All right. So now I'm going to, show you how I'm going to make this small UI. Now, Suchana, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Hello. Yeah, so is it okay if we extend the session by 10 or 15 more minutes, like 8,
Yeah,
10,
yeah,
8,
no
15?
problem.
Yeah, because we started a little bit late, right?
Yes, yes, okay.
Yeah, okay. So it might take a little bit, 20 or 30 minutes for this part. Okay, guys, so this was the basic structure of a Flutter application. Now, if anyone has any problems understanding anything, shoot your questions at me. Okay. So is there anything that you guys didn't understand, or do you think that it is really easy? मेरे को तो बहुत easy लगा था first time. Does anyone have any question right now? You guys can ask. I know Devanjan, it's really easy, right? Flutter is very easy to understand at first. What's the syntax of creating a widget? Nothing. You just child ke andar. You just have to name the syntax. That's it. And what's the best thing about it is when you write a new syntax, let's say inside a text, after the text, I want to write another text. Once you write text, TE agar likhoge, VS Code or Android Studio is going to show you like what are the things that what are the different widgets Flutter has to offer you. Just as you write it, you put the text inside a quotes and you write something. Let's say I write Samrat. There we go. Samrat is added over here. Let's say I want to add some numbers, random numbers. We save it. The number is over there. Let's say I want to make a small box. Okay. Box agar bananga, I would use now a widget called container. And let's say if you want to understand what are the different attributes that particular widget has, I'm going to tell you two different ways to understand. Okay. First is the hard way, which is basically going into the documentation, reading all the attribute it has, then understanding things. That is the hard way. Now I'm going to tell you the easier way. What you do is, once you're inside the widget, okay, ये brackets के अंदर में जब हो, just press Control Space. If you press Control Space, it's going to give you all the name of everything, all the attributes, and on the left side also you're going to get a small bit of documentation to understand what that attribute does. It is very easy. Okay, so let's say I want to give the container a height of 100. I want to give it a width of 100, and I want to color the container as red accent. ठीक है, थोड़ा सा lighter shade of red. ज़्यादा red अच्छा नहीं लगता. Now, as soon as I save it or hot reload it, you can see that there is now container over there. Now let's say I want to make the corners of it a little bit rounded. Okay, let's then we use another attribute called decoration. Inside it, we use a widget called box decoration. Inside it, let's give it a border radius. We're going to use this particular method of the function of the class border radius called circular. We're going to give it a radius of 20 pixels. There you go. Now there's a box of 100 width, 100 height, of color red accent, and it has a border radius of 20 pixels. It's that easy. Okay, so Soham, is it like, did you understand, or should I go on ahead with it once more? You can actually, you know, be open up with the questions. Okay, so these things are done. Now let's dive deep into this UI that I'm going to make with you guys. Okay, so don't worry, I have my tab open on my side. So if you guys have any questions, I'll be able to see it in the tab. Now you guys are going to see how we make UIs. So let's say, just like Khushi asked me a few moments ago, like UI UX kaise? So let me tell you what we guys do in our office.
हाँ
Okay.
बोल बोल
So let's say a new app design comes.
हाँ
We
वही
get a
question
design like this. फिर हमें ये design देके we have to
क्या
make
नाम
the UI. I'm just going to do the same thing that I did over here. Okay. So let's, before starting the whole thing, let's do a small analysis of the UI first. Okay. So let me just share it with my tab. I'm going to show it on my tab once. It is over here. So wait. So okay, I'm going to stop my sharing from my laptop a little bit, and I'm going to come to my tab. Okay. All
एक मिनट
right.
बना
I want to share my screen. Okay. Okay, my tab is visible. All right.
প্রজেক্ট রান করতে হবে মানে বুঝলাম না
Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here
আচ্ছা
and I'm going
ওকে
to
ওকে দেখে
add
নিয়েছি
that particular image which I actually shared with myself over here.
হুম হুম
Okay.
হুম তোর তাহলে ট্রেন কটা है
Yeah. The image is visible to you guys, right? Everyone is able to see the image properly? Come on, guys. I need a confirmation. Okay, Trisha. All right. Okay, now let's get into, analyzing how. I'm going to tell you how we analyze a UI in the industry. Okay.
আরে অত করতে হবে
So
না তুই
पहले मैं
মানে
सोचूंगा
তোর
ठीक
আজকে
है
রাত
UI
একটাই ট্রেন
UI UX डेवलपर ने मुझे ये वाला UI
একটার
दिया है.
সময়
First thing that I'm going to see is it has an input part over here. Okay. So we're definitely going to use something called text field widget inside Flutter, and you guys are going to see it.
হ্যাঁ আমি
Then what
অনেকটা
I'm
করে
going to
দিয়েছি আমি
see
অ্যাডমিনের
is
পার্টে এডিট
this
কদিন
whole
ধরে করছি
app
কদিন বসে
that which you are seeing is basically into a column. You see, column ka first wala parent, first wala child is this. Then we can see the second child. We can actually differentiate
মানে
or
কখন কালকে
divide it
16 তারিখে
into rows. Okay. So we can call this a row. Now, just to be
পাঁচটার
very
সময়
clear, row is something horizontal and column is something vertical. All right, guys,
ও
just
আচ্ছা আচ্ছা
being
ঠিক
clear.
আছে
So we can divide it into rows over here. All right. So we can see that there are ultimately
আওয়াজ কেটে যাচ্ছে
5 different rows over here. So I would say
আওয়াজ
this row is
কেটে
the
যাচ্ছে
second
তো
child,
হ্যালো
this is the third child, this fourth, this is fifth, and this is
15
sixth.
তারিখে
All right. So there we have a small kind of analysis of the UI that we made. Okay.
আওয়াজ বিশাল
So
কেটে
this
যাচ্ছে
whole,
কিছু
there
শোনা
is
যাচ্ছে
a
না
main column over here. The column which
ওকে
you
ওকে
guys saw, the column widget which you guys saw me using inside the application. And then inside it, we have the first children, then a row, second row, third row, fourth row, and fifth row. Okay. Now, this could have been done in the different way also, like this is basically what we know as a column of rows. It could also have been a row of columns. Okay. But we won't get into that kind of, complexity right now. Let's just go ahead with it. So you can see that the whole thing is inside the scaffold. This first thing is a text field, and the later children are rows actually. Okay. We can call these rows. Okay. Now we go a little bit deeper. Now let's see what are inside the single rows. Now if I divide the first row, we can see that the first row has a total of one, two, three, four, four children. All right. Now these different children have different attributes. First thing is these are buttons. We can see the buttons are definitely going to have some kind of animation, a splash animation when we tap on it. We can see that it has a color, and we can see that it has a text. We can also see that it has a text color. So yeah, so we divided the whole thing. So now if we actually divide it into a tree, okay. So what we would see is there is a column, all right. Column has lots of children, let's say text, and there are a lot more rows over here, okay. And inside the row, there are, let's say, button 1, button 2, button 3, and button 4. Okay. So this is a small kind of analysis that we do before starting the app. It actually helps us to lay out the foundation of all the UI elements inside the app. Okay. So now let's start building the app. All right. I'm going to stop my sharing in my tab, and I'm going to start my sharing in the laptop. Okay, what's the time right now? It's 7:40. Okay. I'll finish. I'll start coding, and let's say I'll try to finish it earlier so that you guys can have some questions that you can ask me later on. Okay.
Sorry to interrupt for a second, but what you just
Yeah,
did,
yeah, sure.
that was a flow diagram, right? Do you call that a flow diagram, or what do we call that?
Yep, it was nothing. It was just basically a small, UI analysis of the, uh, UI that we get in our industry, in our companies. So what we do is, अगर हमें ऐप मिल जाता है, you guys should not do this. If you get the design of the app, you should not just directly start coding. Okay, ये ठीक है, ये ऐप मिल गया, ये ऐसा होगा, ऐसा होगा, ऐसा होगा. Do not do that. Okay, my TL has taught me this in a very hard way. Okay, and what you guys need to do first is you guys need to break down the whole UI into smaller parts. That's breaking down is called UI analysis. Okay, so that's what I did right now. I broke the whole UI into smaller parts. I broke the main problem into smaller problems. I'm going to solve the smaller problems and then going to concatenate the smaller problems into the bigger problem. That's how we solve the whole application problem. Okay.
Understood. Understood.
Yeah. So, yeah, let's get started with it. So I'm going to make the whole thing inside this application only. First of all, if you guys don't want this debug on the right part, I'm going to remove that.
Tani?
That is a thing which we do in the material app. So I'm going
Tani?
to debug, make this attribute as false. I'm going to remove that. Okay. So now let's keep this image open over here. So you can see that the first thing that I did, okay, I'll do one small thing that would be also easier actually. I can actually share the UI analysis over here so that you guys can understand how I'm making the whole application using the UI analysis. All right. So let me open. Oh, no, my bad. It's not this. Yeah, this is the thing. All right. So let's zoom in. No, zoom out a little bit here. Okay, so this is the whole UI analysis that we did right now. So first things first, the main child of it is a column. Before even that, you can see that the whole background is black in color. What I'm going to do, I'm going to create everything over here only. All right. Let's say I'm going to remove any parameter and everything. I want to actually remove the whole my home page. Let's remove it. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into lib. I'm going to make a new file. I'm going to name it calculator page. One second, let me get back into the meet in my tab or else I'll miss the questions. Yeah, okay. Now I'm going to name it calculator page dot dart. Okay. Now I want to make a stateful app. Why do I need to make a stateful app? Because there are going to be variables in it just for state changeover. So there is a small snippet for it. You can basically write STFUL, and VS Code will give you a thing that will help you to write a stateful widget. So you press enter, there you go. VS Code just used a small snippet to create a stateful widget. So I'll name it calculator page. Okay. I'm done with it. And similarly, if you want to make a stateless app, you would write STLES and press enter, and VS Code will make a stateless widget for it. We don't need it right now. We're just going to work with stateful widget for the time being. All right. Now what you guys are going to see is basically the whole application coming into life. The design that I made, it coming into life. All right. So now what we're going to do is we are going to use a scaffold in it. Okay. And we are going to give it an app bar for the time being so that we can understand that we are in the correct page. Inside the app bar, we are going to use a widget called text. Now, guys, I'm really sorry since we have such a small amount of time right now. I'm going to go a little bit faster over here. If you guys have any questions, you can ask it on the tab, like in the chat. I'm going to check it over here. I'll be able, I'll answer it right away. So, Chana, I need your help a little bit over here. Like, why, if I miss any questions, could you just let me know if someone is saying anything?
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Yeah, okay. So let's give the app bar a title called calculator app. Now, how do I use this particular file into the main.dart file? It's going to be very easy. We named this class as calculator page. We're just going to go over here. We're going to remove this thing from the home attribute, and we are going to call the calculator page. Once I start writing the name, VS Code is going to tell me कि देखो भाई calculator page नाम का तुमने एक ये ऐसा widget बनाया था, ये अभी available है. Just press on it. Just as you press on it, you can see that an import file is already created over here. So it is very easy. You do not need to import it first, फिर उसको use करना है, वैसे नहीं. Just write the name of the class or the widget, and it's automatically going to import everything for you. Okay. Now I press Ctrl Save, and we can see that we are in that page. So cool. We are over here. Now, if we look into the UI, we can see that the background of the app is black in color and it does not have an app bar. Let's remove the app bar for the time being. Let's remove it. Let's give it a background color of colors.black. App pura black ho gaya. Okay. Now, the thing is, what we are now going to do is we're going to make the buttons first. Okay. Since the buttons are smaller elements and this text field that you are seeing over here is a larger element, we're going to make it in the last part. All right. So let's see the we can see that all the buttons are inside the column and inside rows. Okay, the rows are actually inside the column. So what we're going to do is for the scaffold, I'm first going to make a container. I'm going to give the container a height of the device that we are using. For that, we use a syntax like this, media query, which is basically referring to the device on which it is being rendered. Dot of context, dot size, dot height. This particular line of code gives you the height of the app. Similarly, we're going to give it the width of the device. All right. Now inside it, this is a very good practice so that you understand that the whole application is inside the bounds of the device only. Now inside the container, we are going to use a column widget. Inside the column, we are going to have rows. All right. Now we did an analysis. We saw how many rows did we see. So if we start from here, it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5 rows in total. Okay. And I'm going to comment over here that we are going to make the text field over here. Okay. We're going to make the text field. By text field, I mean this part. All right. And this is row 1, row 2, row 3, row 4, row 5. So inside a column, you can place everything like this. All right. You've got it over here. And we can also, use a size box instead of a container. But container, since container has a lot more attributes in it, that's why I usually prefer to use that. Now let's start with the first row. What we are going to do is we're not going to code like a noob. Okay. We're going to code smart. We're not going to actually use repetitive code. Okay. So we're going to make a small different widget for the button. Then we are going to reuse that particular widget. You know, if you practice these small things, companies are going to hire you much more because these are the things that actually make the architecture of the whole code base, easier for other developers to understand as well. That's why you guys need to follow certain rules like this. So inside this row, I'm going to make inside the first row, I'm going to make a child called text. Let's say it has a text data. Let's give it a text type. Abhi ke liye. Why am I doing this? Just so that just because of the fact I want to see where the part data comes in. You can see that the data comes in over here. Okay, we definitely do not want that. तो हमें समझ में आ गया, हमें एक आइडिया आ गया है कि फर्स्ट वाला रो अभी कहाँ पे प्लेस्ड है. So let's remove the text. Now let's start using a widget, which we know as material button. Okay. We're going to use the material button widget, जिसके अंदर the main thing is on press नाम का एक attribute है. Okay. Now on press attribute, what it does is it basically helps you to write any function inside it. This is a very interesting part because this you can actually see it in action how logic and UI is being compressed into the same code base. This is very unique for other if you compare it with other frameworks. So on press में मैं लिख देता हूँ इसमें print मुझे करना है C. ठीक है, print C करना है क्योंकि the first button is C over here. So let's make the design of the button now. Now if we press S, we cannot see actually anything because everything is black over there right now. So I actually for the time being और उसके अंदर कोई child भी नहीं है. So let's make a child of that. Okay, don't forget the commas, guys. Like just like we forget semicolons in C++, do not forget commas in Flutter code. So let's make a child over here. Let's give it a text. I want the text to be C as well. Okay, still nothing is visible. All right, not an issue. मैं टेक्स्ट का स्टाइल दे देता हूँ थोड़ा सा एक कलर दे देता हूँ. लेट्स से द कलर बी colors dot white for the time being, and material button का जो background color है it is named as color only over here. Let's give it a color of blue for the time being. देखो हमें एक बटन मिल गया है. ठीक है, the first part is very done. Okay, but this button doesn't look like the button over here. It looks very boring. We don't want that. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to change the shape of the material button. Okay, we're going to use a function. Now, don't worry, guys. You guys are not going to forget this. I mean, you might forget this, but I'm definitely going to add it in GitHub and give it to you guys so that it's easier for you guys to, refer to it in future. So let's give it a shape, not rounded rectangle border. I want to give it a circle border. Just as I said it, you can see that it became a circle. All right. I want it to be a little bit bigger. I'm going to give it like, make it inside a size box. I'm going to wrap the another thing. Let's say if you want a particular widget to be a child of another new widget, what you can do is you can press this bulb and you can wrap it with a widget. Now you can name it another widget. It is so simple to, basically make a widget the child of another parent widget. So easier with these functionalities. You guys are going to get these functionalities on Android Studio as well. Okay. Now I'm going to keep it in a size box and I'm going to give it a height of let's say 50 and a width of 50. As soon as I give it, it became a little bit bigger, but I want it to be a lot more bigger than that. I think this seems a little bit more bigger. Yeah, 70 seems good enough. Okay. So now we have the size and shape of the button. Now what we want to do is we want to change the font height, the font size of the widget. Okay. What we are going to do, we are going to come in text style of it. We're going to change the font size of it. Okay. So let's change the font size to be something like 24. Yeah, it is now a little bit bigger. How about 28 or 30? 30 seems good enough, I guess. Nah, 28 was better. Yeah, okay. So now we have the size of it as well. Let's change the proper color now. Okay. The color of the button that you saw over there was gray. Let's change it to gray. Yep, got it. And the color of the text that you saw over there was black. We have our first button. First button is done. इसका font थोड़ा different है. Later on, I'll tell you how to change fonts as well. Okay. One button is done. Now the thing is, I don't want to make the code repetitive. ठीक है. इसके लिए क्या करेंगे? What I'm going to do is I'm going to follow the same structure. I'm going to make another file called calculator button dot. Okay. I'm going to make it a stateless widget now. Okay. STLESS. We know that the text inside the button is never going to change. That's why I'm using a stateless widget over here. I'm going to use it as calculator button. And inside it, what I'm going to do is, इसके अंदर, the size box which I made, I'm going to cut it. And I'm going to paste it over here in the return part. Okay. You can see that I'm actually making a function so that I can reuse the whole thing. But इसका तो text और color different रहेगा ना. What I'm now going to do is, I'm going to make parameters or arguments जो हम बोलते हैं for this particular class. This is the, we are getting a lot more into object-oriented programming right now. First thing is, we want to give it a void callback, let's say. Now, void callback is basically a function like this. On press में हमने जो function दिया था, उसको ही void callback हम इधर कहते हैं. ठीक है. Let's say this function is name on pressed function. Okay. Let's make it final. That is, हम अगर इसको tap करेंगे, you can see that C is being printed over here because I already have that thing written over here. That is the first thing. Next thing that we can see is we want the color of the button. So what we will do is we will make another parameter named button color. Okay. Then we will make another parameter called text color. And इसके ऊपर मैं एक another parameter बना देता हूँ of type string, जिसको हम basically the text which is going to get inside the button. Okay. So what we are going to do is we are going to name it button text. All right. So I think we are done. Now what we have to do is, ये हमने तो वेरिएबल का नाम बना दिया, but उसको तो आर्ग्यूमेंट्स अनुजय मुझे दिखाना पड़ेगा, right? Now what we are going to do is we are going to declare those arguments inside the constructor of the class. Okay. Over here you can see that this part is the constructor of the class. Inside it we have to make everything required so that the next coder understands that ye sub parameters are required if we want to use this class as a widget again. Okay, I'm just going to do it a little bit faster. Guys, am I going faster? You guys can tell me anything in the chat. I'm having a look at the chat as well. Okay. Yeah. So everything is done. Now what I want to do is, मैंने जो ये सब बनाया इधर, I want to definitely use them over here, right? तो क्या करेंगे? जो function हमने इधर लिखा है, we are going to keep it over here. we are going to keep the color, which is basically the button color, as the button color which we declared over here. The text over here is going to be used with a dollar because it's a variable over here, which is the button text. And finally, the color of the text. Now, let me have a check. Yeah, there are different colors as well for the text also. So what we are going to do over here is text color. Yeah. So that is done. Now we are going to reuse the whole thing over here. It will become so easy. So what we are going to do is we are going to use calculator button, and just you can see all the parameters that we made. It is now working like a widget over here. It becomes that easy. Okay. Abhi ke liye, let's make all the functions, the pressable functions on it as an empty function. Abhi kuch nahi chahiye. Okay. First ka button text is going to be C, the button color is going to be colors.gray, and the text color is going to be colors.black. All right. As soon as I press save, you guys can see nothing is changed because I made it like similar to the one which I made earlier. Abhi thoda fast kaam kar lete hain. Abhi, now I want the first whole row to be completed like this. Okay, मैं क्या करूँगा? I'm going to copy this, paste it 4 times. Done. मुझे वो इतना बड़ा कोड इधर न लिख के मैं इधर लिख दिया अभी. Now let's say this is plus slash minus. Sorry, my bad. Then it is the modular operator. Then it is the division operator. Sorry, where's the division operator? We do not have a division. We're going to use this one only. Okay, you can see every button is added over here. But you can see that the division operator has a little bit of different format. So yeah, we're definitely going to change the button color of it. Let's make the button color as amber. Let's make the text color as white. There, our button is made so easily. You can see that it becomes so easy as you use reusable widgets more and more. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove all the other rows, and I'm going to copy this row like 5 more times because we have 5 different rows, right? 2, 3, 4, 5. If I press enter, you can see that inside a column, now there are 5 different rows. Okay. Now we definitely have to make some exception for the 0. It's a little bit fat over here. Okay. So now let's see what the different colors are. So we can see that all the right buttons are actually the same as the division button. These are a little bit darker and they have the text color as white. Not an issue. Let's do it. First, it comes 7. Then this comes as 8. This comes as 9. And this thing comes as multiplication operator. Okay, I might just use X over here. You can see they have changed. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change all these black colors to a darker color of gray. So let's say I want to give, 700. So we have given 700. Now there are some certain null check operators that you guys might see me using over here, like exclamation mark. I will give you guys a documentation at the end of the session, which will help you guys to understand more about these things easier later on. Okay. It is a little bit darker. Wait, what? Oh, sorry. I did something wrong. My bad, guys. Okay. These have to be more darker, shade of gray. Let's make it 800. Yeah. It seems a little bit more better. And we can use this as white. Okay, yeah, that is done as well. This X doesn't look good. How about capital X? Yeah, that seems fine enough. Now similarly, I'm going to, my bad, we should actually use this row for 3 more times because all the other buttons are very similar to this particular row. So now I save it. You can see there is 7, 8, 9. We don't want that. We want 4, 5, 6 over here. So it's going to be 4. That is going to be 5, that is going to be 6, and the last one is going to be minus. That is done. See, like making the UI is so easier in Flutter. Next, 1, 2, 3, And this was a plus, I guess. Yep, there we go. Okay, you see. Now, before making the last row, let's make the buttons a little bit bigger because we can see that they are a little bit bigger over there as well. 80 doesn't seem right. How about 90? Uh, let's make it 100 only. Yeah, now it seems better. Now you can still see that there is a little bit of spacing left over here. Then let's work on something called axis alignments. All right, let's make them 90. Now, just like, uh, you know, basically inside this column, we want all the children of the column to be at the bottom. So what we are going to do, we are going to use the main axis of the column. Always remember, inside a column, we call the main axis as the vertical axis and the cross axis as the horizontal axis. Same goes for row, but it is vice versa. The main axis is the horizontal one and the cross axis is the vertical one. So what we want to do, we want to bring all the children of the column at the bottom of the axis. So main axis. So what we're going to do is we're going to use main axis alignment.n. We do it, they come below. And inside each row, what we want to do is we use everything on the horizontal axis to have equal space in between. So what we're going to do, we are going to use the main axis alignment space evenly. Let's say space evenly. We can do it like this. Now you can see everything has a proper alignment in the first row. All right. I'm going to copy the same thing and I'm going to paste it in the other rows as well. And now you guys are going to see everything is in proper alignment now. All right. Now I want a little bit of gapping in between all the rows as well. So what I'm going to do is सब रो के बीच में I'm going to add a small size box and give it a height of 10 maybe. All right. Let's see if we give it a height of 10 in the first, it looks proper. It looks good. We're going to copy this and put it in between every row so that, the app actually looks a little bit better. Now it's starting to take the shape of this. I'm not making the colors totally like the one which we, are seeing over here. इतना analysis करके करूँगा तो time चला जाएगा. Okay, guys. So bear with it. So now you can see that the last row, it actually has a larger button and it has these two small buttons. ठीक है, चलेगा. क्या हुआ? Let's copy this row. Let's paste it. It's definitely not like this. We can see that this last column, this last button is a dot, and this is an equal to. Okay, this is done. Now these two buttons, yes, इसमें आ गया गड़बड़. अब मैं ये use नहीं करूँगा. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this size box only from here. Okay, I'm going to paste it over here. मुझे इस वही बटन जैसा यूज करना है, but I'm going to make it a little bit customized from my side. So for the color, I'm going to use this one only. My bad. And for the button text, what we are going to do is this button has 0 inside it. Okay. The text color is going to be colors.white. Now we can see that we have that button, but button का तो width different है. मैं क्या करूँगा, बटन का शेप ही चेंज कर दूंगा. Okay, we are going to make the button का width a little bit more, to the let's make it double the size of what the height of it is. If we make it like this, we can see that it is looking perfect. But इसका तो rounded corner है ना. Now we can see इसका तो नहीं है. So what we are going to do over here, we are going to use the shape rounded rectangle border, जिसका border radius हम दे देते हैं, let's say somewhere around 80. There we go. I think it looks similar. Oh, the 0 is on the left side. That's a bit of a problem. What are we going to do for that? Okay, so don't worry about it. We are going to do a similar thing which we did earlier. We are going to wrap this text with a row. In a row, whenever we put anything, it always comes to the leftmost part. So if I save it, you can see that the zero has come over here. Now we need a little bit of spacing for this particular thing on the left as well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this text inside a new widget called padding, which can give padding for a widget as well. I can, let's say I only want to give it a padding to the left side. So let's say left में मुझे 16 pixels का देना है. There we go. We have the whole UI ready, almost the whole UI ready. And pressing it actually, has the animations. It just took me how much? I guess 15 minutes to make this whole UI. It's that easy. Okay. Now, small thing, since we don't have that much amount of time, I'm not going to make the operations of the calculator over here. I'm just going to show you guys how I'm on the press of a button, on the press of any numerical button, I'm adding them on a text field. Okay. Uh, let's say I want to add the text field here. Okay. All right. That is done. Now the text field always has a variable, needs to have a variable inside it, which we know as controller. Okay. Now the controller actually, saves the state of the things that are getting pushed into the text field, that are being added into the text field. We call that controller as text editing controller. And this we are going to call as the number controller. Okay. Text editing controller is added over here. And let's add the number controller over here inside the controller attribute. Now the text field knows that whatever gets added into it, it is going to keep a track of it inside this text editing controller. I'll show you guys how later on, like as we move forward. We saved it. You can see a small line came over here. Okay. We can actually add text and things like that. You are not able to see it because it's totally black. All right. So what we need to do is instead of we need to make it a little bit more what do you say, a more representable. All right, so let's add a few text in it first, then let's change the font of it, then we are going to disable the keyboard of the application and we are going to use the buttons of over here to push the things inside the text field. All right, so let's change the style of the text field. Let's say that I want the font size to be really huge. It's really big over here. Okay, let's give the font size 40 maybe. You can see small amount of text over here, still not visible that much. Let's make it 50 and let's make the color of the text as colors.white. Now you can see the text. Now let's actually put the correct words which we have seen in the UI. All right. And there we go. It looks a lot similar. Yeah, 60 looks good enough. And we don't want this underline. So what we are going to do is we are going to say that the decoration for the text field, we want input decoration, and for the border we need input border. No. This might get a little bit complicated for you guys who are actually new to this. Trust me, it gets a lot more easier. Now what we want to do is we want the text field to be at the rightmost side of the thing. So what we want is, let's find that we can see that there is actually a text align over here, attribute over here. We're going to make the text alignment dot right. Now all the text got into the right side. Okay, this is also done. Now we need a little bit of spacing on the right side as well. So let's wrap it with the padding. Give the padding, give a small amount of padding. Right में कितना चाहिए? Let's say 16 pixels. Seems a lot better. Let's make the font a little bit bigger. Okay, that's done. Now what we actually want to do over here is we want the text field to be disabled for the time being. Okay. Let's make it disabled. Now what we want to do is, for all the numerical buttons that you can see over here, we want that on the press of any numerical button, we want to add whatever variable is there in this text field into it. Okay. So after this, I'm going to conclude the session because we don't have any more time. But anyhow, you actually got to learn how to make UIs really fast. Because देखो, अगर Android में XML में बनाओगे drag and drop करके, it might take you a little bit more time as well. So Flutter में it's a lot easier. So let's say on the press of it, what I want is नंबर कंट्रोलर नाम का जो मैंने टेक्स्ट कंट्रोलर बनाया उसका जो टेक्स्ट है आई वांट द टेक्स्ट टू हैव a number 7 added to it at the end. Okay, let's make it for every number that we can find. Yep, that is done, that is done, that is done. We are going to change the values inside the function. Don't worry about that. We have, my bad, what? Oh god. Yeah, let me copy it once again. And it's not getting selected. My bad, what's happening? Yeah. Okay, now let's change the functions of them really, functions inside there really quick. This is 7, that's correct. This has to be 8. This has to be 9. Then this has to be 4. This has to be 5. This has to be 6. This has to be 7. 1, 2, 3. We forgot about another number, the fat one at the below. So what we want to do is we want the number controller's text to, we want to concatenate 0 inside it. As we save it, you're going to see that, and let's, you know what, let's just restart the whole app so that the text field, you know, doesn't have any value inside it. So the app got restarted. Now, if you see, we can start adding numbers inside it. So this is basically the UI part of it. Now, definitely, guys, I'm so sorry we don't have that much amount of time. I think we will have to conclude over here. There's definitely time now for questions. But if you guys are really interested about me going more like deeper into it, if you guys are interested for another session, you guys can ask Suchana. She might arrange another one where I can talk a little bit about, you know, logic and state managements more. All right. I'm going to talk a little bit about state management right now, only along with the questions. But after that, yeah, I think we will conclude it. So, Suchana, I think I'm going to stop my presentation over here. I'm not stopping the presentation, don't worry about that. But anyway, I think this, you guys enjoyed a little bit of Flutter over here, and I hope you guys understood how Flutter works from the base as well. So, like, is there anyone over here who has any questions? You guys can ask me, and after that, I might say some things, you know, about how Flutter has changed my life. Any questions, guys?
Flutter projects you would like recommend?
Flutter projects I would recommend, like to add in your CV.
Yes, और also like a beginner जैसे आपने calculator बनाया, हाँ CV
Hmm.
वाले भी, CV वाले भी.
Okay, so the thing is, if we get another session, if you guys, you know, get another session with me in the future, I can actually show you guys how to integrate APIs into your application. And as soon as you start integrating APIs, you can start showing real datas into Flutter app, you know, from the internet. So for that, I would definitely suggest making a weather app. Then you can make a really good expense app. You can make an e-commerce app. You can make any kind of small social media applications like that. Those are the basic things. And if you go into the advanced part, तब तो बड़ा e-commerce app बना सकते हो. You can make something similar to Instagram. You can use Firebase, which is a, you know, serverless backend platform which helps you to use backend functionalities inside
Firebase
your
cloud
Flutter
है
app.
क्या?
Yep, it actually works on the cloud.
Okay. So it is used for hosting a project.
Not host. It is used for hosting a project. Mainly, it is used for making all the backend functionalities workable inside the cloud only. So you don't need a different backend developer to make all your backend functionalities for the application. Okay, you guys can learn more about it through documentations and stuff like that. Anyway, since I can see no other questions coming on, I'm going to tell you a little bit of story. Okay, a small story. It won't take that much of time. So when I started with Flutter, मैंने जब Flutter start किया था, it was 2019, sorry, not 29, my bad, 2019. And what happened is, like I first started with Android development only. Now मुझे XML में मुझे बहुत दिमाग खराब होता था उसमें, to make the UI. That's why I was confused with Flutter and React Native. फिर मैंने सोचा नहीं फ्लटर ही सीखता हूँ because the Dart language is very similar to C++ and Java. Trust me, like my life changed after that decision. ठीक है. After that, like 2019, at that time I was in my class 12. Okay. So at that time, I started doing Flutter. Got my first internship even before my college started. They did not require anything. Got my first internship before that when there was COVID going on. Did a total of 4 internships till my third, no, till my second year.
भैया
Did a total
internship
of four.
roadmap, please. Internship roadmap.
Yeah. I'll definitely give it to you. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll give you my WhatsApp number. You guys can connect with me over there.
I
Now,
was going to ask
since
that.
third year, yeah, definitely. Since third year, I am right now doing two full-time jobs, like not two, I'm doing one right now. I've already switched my job. In third year, I was in Mumbai doing a full-time Flutter developer job. Right now, I'm doing a full-time Flutter developer job right here in Kolkata in a company called Fort Mines. And the TL over there and everyone has helped me a lot to grow. But yes, Flutter has helped me a lot to get into development, to understand the basics of app development, also web development as well. जब मैंने Flutter web use किया था. But the thing is, guys, if you guys actually want to get into freelancing and get internships faster, and you guys are really confused about what to get into, do not start with, you know, any difficult things like Angular, JS, CS, or WhatsApp. No, like definitely frameworks are very difficult to start with, but Flutter is one of the frameworks which I can definitely agree with anyone that it is so easy to understand. First say कि I got my first internship within just learning Flutter for 1 month. Okay, मैं एक month Flutter सीखा था. Definitely I knew a little bit of app development because I used to do Android as well, so that's why. But after that, I got my first internship within 1 month, and uh, yeah, you can make projects really fast. Freelancers, basically, अभी क्या होता है? Clients भी Flutter developers and React Native developers को prefer करते हैं because they need one developer for two different platforms. And the more you get into cross-platform development, the more you can actually get into service-based, companies and startups and things like that. It has helped me a lot. So
Are you
yeah,
working remotely right now?
no, हर रोज ऑफिस जाना पड़ता है.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in my last semester right now. So I'm in my
आप
last semester, my eighth semester.
सौम्यदीप दा को जानते हैं? सौम्यदीप दा.
Yeah, Somadipta, yeah, Red Hat. Who doesn't know
आज
him?
आज उनका सेशन था. So
Yeah.
I went there and met him and मैंने उनसे पूछा कि भैया आपके जैसे कैसे बने. He was like यही करो
Oh man. Don't worry. You have to stop overthinking and start, working as soon as possible. Definitely, you have to analyze, uh, the whole application, the project first. But anyway, apart from that, you have to start as early as possible so that अभी college में आके what I've seen with lots of my friends is सब लोग बहुत लेजी हो जाते हैं, देयर लाइक कॉलेज लाइफ एंजॉय करना है, बट इफ यू एक्चुअली मिस दीज 4 years ना, if you actually put efforts in these 4 years, I can tell you, you're going to enjoy for the rest of your life. So that's why anyone who asks me कि अभी क्या करना है, I would always say start learning a framework as soon as possible. Get into development, and you know, as soon as you're done with everything, uh, I mean, learning the whole thing, it will be a lot more easier for you to get internships as well. पहला पहला internships LinkedIn से नहीं मिलेगा. Uh,
रेफरेंस।
referral, not even referral. I would say like you know, internशाला, then वो सब जगह से मिलेगा, because LinkedIn में
वो लेजिट
ज्यादातर जो
होता
भी,
है?
हाँ सॉरी,
वो इंटर्नशाला लेजिट होता है?
हम मेरा फर्स्ट 2 internships उधर से ही है.
हैं?
या
I never tried that because like classmates कह रहे थे it isn't legit and it's like fake or
no, it's not legit, it's just that companies over there बहुत कम पे करते हैं.
and what
That's
about
the
like
main.
Codesoft or that?
Codesoft, yeah, you can actually get things from there as well. But I would always suggest कि देखो, पहला first 2 internships, do not go
Hmm.
after the money, man. Do not go after the money. Just go after the experience that you're going to get. Okay. So eh, if that, अगर तुम्हें experience मिल गया और तुम्हारा CV थोड़ा सा भी strong हो गया, then I'm definitely sure that you're going to get more internships from LinkedIn as well. Because actually, to be very honest, the best internships and jobs you can get are on LinkedIn, Glassdoor, and things like that only.
आप फ्रीलांसिंग भी काम कर रहे थे ना शायद?
करता हूँ ना, सैटरडे संडे करता हूँ, तो आज ही सुबह कर रहा था.
फ्रीलांसिंग सो लाइक आपने किस पे आपका पोर्टफोलियो दिखा सर?
I don't have a portfolio website right now. Like, I've been doing development since such a long time, but you can actually go into my LinkedIn, and my resume is over there.
सर आपका
You can actually
लिंक्डइन
see.
अकाउंट दे सकते हैं?
हाँ sure. अरे सर मत बोलो, come on, just call me Shomrat. I'm in fourth year, guys. Okay. Just give me a moment. I'll just push the code that I made today into GitHub and share you guys the link. After that,
आप
you
एंड्रॉइड
guys will
लीड
be
थे
able to
ना
access.
और प्रसून भैया वेब लीड?
Prasunda, Prasunda was web lead.
अभी
Prasunda
खोलते साथ
was web lead.
का सबसे पहला अकाउंट।
What year are you in?
हम्म?
तुम कौन से year में हो?
सेकेंड ईयर, सेकेंड ईयर।
Second year. All right, all right. Okay, I think this is set up. Let me refresh. I made it public only, right? Yeah, it is public.
एक्सेंचर के
Okay, guys.
रिजल्ट्स आ
So,
गए थे क्या भैया?
किसका?
एक्सेंचर?
Yep, my friends got into there. I actually don't sit for. I never sat for the on-campus placements. Like, they give a lot less packages. इसलिए I would suggest कि start preparing for off-campus placements as soon as possible.
It
So
sounds
anyway,
easy ना,
guys,
आप बोल रहे थे it sounds easy, it isn't.
it is easy. Come on, if you start now, it is going to be easy.
अच्छा आप बता
Okay.
सकते हो
Anyway,
एक्सेंचर से मिला जैसे?
one second, Kushi. Yeah. So guys, I shared the link for the project over here. You guys can actually access it. It is a public repository, and uh, it will, you guys can refer to it on how to make UIs. Yeah, Kushi, tell me.
I'm sorry like
अरे no issues. Sorry बोलने का क्या है?
नहीं तो किनका किनका हुआ? एक शायद शौमिक भैया का हुआ ना?
बहुत सारे फ्रेंड्स का हुआ है मेरा. अभी पहले पहले नहीं हो रहा था, बट आफ्टर दैट बहुत सारा हो गया.
क्योंकि इस ईयर लाइक सब कोई बोल रहे थे कि प्लेसमेंट नहीं हो रहा है, प्लेसमेंट नहीं हो रहा है।
ना हो गया है. अभी अभी सबको मिल जा रहा है.
आपने AIML पे भी काम किया था क्या?
No, I never worked on AIML. I am a development person. like AIML, I find it interesting, but जब करने जाता हूँ, then it becomes a little bit boring मेरे लिए, इसलिए I never got into it. Okay, this is my LinkedIn, guys, and this is my phone number. Okay, so you guys can contact me on LinkedIn. You guys can contact me on WhatsApp anytime. I'm happy to help you guys anytime. Acing your first interview, like development interview, I can give you guys some tips on it, or how to land your first internships and things like that. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it a lot.
Some
Sushana,
resources,
I
please.
think, resources.
Some resources, yes.
Yes, resources. Okay, let me give you. देखो, Flutter का जो documentation है, that is the best resource. Apart from that, I'm just going to give you a Udemy course. Okay, which
Hmm.
I basically give all of my friends to, uh, for getting into Flutter development first. उसका नाम ही ऐसा है, मैं प्रोनाउंस नहीं कर पाता. His name is Maximilian Schwarzmuller. Okay, he has made better Flutter, this course than Angela Yu. Angela Yu तो बहुत famous है, but उससे भी अच्छा
Hmm.
है ये. I've shared the link over here. This is one of the main things. Another thing is, just look at random Flutter tutorial videos on YouTube. YouTube is the best thing.
Hmm.
And I would also suggest कि इसके लिए pay ना करके go to YouTube first, learn a little bit more about Flutter over there. Then you can, then if you think कि थोड़ा और advance होना है, then you can actually go ahead and buy this course.
Piracy. अच्छा, आपने
Torrent.
आपने फुल स्टैक ट्राई किया?
मैं तो
वेब
full stack ही
डेवलपमेंट आई
करता हूँ.
मीन.
No, app
वेब
development में I do
डेवलपमेंट.
full stack. I do backend as well.
हाँ.
Yep,
हाँ,
I do
ऐप
backend
डेवलपमेंट में बैकएंड
development.
का क्या हुआ? जैसे कि मुझे इतना समझ आता है कि मर्न स्टैक में फ्रंट एंड में हम लोग यूज मतलब बैकएंड में हम लोग नोड यूज करते हैं, एक्सप्रेस यूज करते हैं. तो ऐप
Yes,
डेवलपमेंट
exactly.
में बैकएंड में क्या यूज करते हैं?
Nothing. I use Node as well.
हैं?
Yes. Node helps you to create APIs. Try to understand the concept.
अच्छा.
Node helps you to create the APIs. Express को हम library बोलते हैं, but it acts like a middleware only, which helps you to connect the APIs with the front end part of the app. Similarly, हम इधर क्या करते हैं? हम node बनाते हैं. Flutter के अंदर there are components of HTTP, जिससे we can use that to connect to the internet, to the servers, and fetch all the data. हम लोग पहले node use करते थे. I used to use Node first. Then in my last job in Mumbai, I did a lot of Spring Boot as well, जो Java में करते हैं. It's a backend development framework which is done in Java. And in the current company, I'm working, in this thing. क्या बोलते हैं? Spring Boot, not Spring Boot, sorry, Nest.js as well. Nest.js is like you don't use JS in it, JavaScript in it, you use TypeScript in it.
अच्छा,
Yep,
Next.js
that's
में
it.
टाइपस्क्रिप्ट यूज होता है?
Not Next, it's Nest, Nest.
हैं? अच्छा, but there is something
Next,
called
there are two
Next.js,
different
right?
frameworks. One is called
हाँ.
Next.js, which is used with React for making front-end applications, and one is a back-end framework, which is Nest.js. And लोग उसको ज्यादातर TypeScript से use करते हैं. I would always suggest TypeScript over JavaScript because it has data types, typecasting है. Becomes कोड को बहुत एरर फ्री कर देता है. जावास्क्रिप्ट जैसे उसमें ऑब्जेक्ट रहता है, ये रहता है, वो रहता है, बहुत कॉम्प्लिकेटेड कर देता है वो.
अच्छा,
So
आप क्या
anyway, guys,
रिकमेंड?
yeah,
एक
बोलो
लास्ट चीज,
बोलो.
सॉरी.
No issues.
So sorry.
No issues, man. Come on, go ahead.
Just this last thing,
हाँ,
that
yeah.
अभी वेब डेवलपमेंट का जो शुरू किया है, तो मतलब
हम्म.
इधर से उधर उछलते रहे, लाइक फ्लटर भी सीखे, फिर इधर बैकएंड तो अभी नहीं आता, बैकएंड सीखना है, फ्रंट एंड में भी कितना ही आता है, जावास्क्रिप्ट ढंग से आता नहीं है. तो क्या क्या करे, मतलब आगे तो सोच ही नहीं रहे कि AIML वगैरह सब छोड़ दिए, वेब 3 और
हाँ,
क्लाउड.
ठीक है. Web3 का क्रेज भी खत्म हो गया है. अभी AI का क्रेज चल रहा है. We don't even know when it's going to end. But just trust this
वेब3 का
one thing.
case?
AI का भी क्रेज बहुत चल रहा है. हाँ, Web3 का भी खत्म हो गया. देयर इज ब्लॉकचेन का भी ज्यादातर यूज भी नहीं होता. कहीं मतलब होता है, बट बीच में
हम्म
2021 22 में इतना क्रेज उठा था, अभी तो वो क्रेज चला गया है। अभी AI ML का क्रेज आया है।
हम्म
नाउ द थिंग इज, दिस वन थिंग दैट आई हैव टू टेल यू इज, जो भी
हम्म
ये सब ट्रेंड्स आता है जाता है, सॉफ्टवेयर डेवलपमेंट इज ऑलवेज गोइंग टू बी देयर बिकॉज ऑफ वन एंड वन रीजन ओनली। वर्ल्ड में बहुत सारे बिजनेस है, ठीक है, स्मॉल बिजनेस है, लार्ज बिजनेस है, बहुत सारे बिजनेसेस है, and they need to showcase their product digitally. This is going to happen for the next 50 years as well. उसके लिए there is software development only, okay, जिसके लिए मोबाइल में apps बनाओ, websites बनाओ. This has been, in the market since the past 20 to 25 years. जब इंटरनेट आया था तभी से स्टार्ट हो गया था, अभी भी चल रहा है, and I'm pretty sure for the next 50 years it is going to remain the same.
evergreen domain.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can stick with development, you can keep on learning other stuff as well, but
हम्म
development will have your back. I'm not going to lie about that.
अंडरस्टूड। आप कोई हैकेथॉन में पार्टिसिपेट किए थे?
मेरा टोटल अभी 22 या 23 हैकाथॉन्स हो गया है। Yep.
कॉलेज कॉलेज के फ्रेंड्स थे साथ में?
You know Archishman Sengupta?
नहीं, ज्योतिर्मय दा को
Yeah, he's
जानती हूँ,
all
सौम्य दा को जानती हूँ,
Jyotir.
और
He was there in the last GDSC team. I think he's still there right now, right? अभी तो श्वेता करा रहा है लीड।
हाँ श्वेता श्वेता दी है।
श्वेता मेरा दोस्त है, श्वेता का दोस्त मेघा पॉल, शी वाज द जीडीएससी लीड लास्ट टाइम। या
लास्ट ईयर मैं थोड़ी एक्टिव नहीं थी, मैंने वर्कशॉप्स अटेंड नहीं किए, कुछ किया नहीं। दिस ईयर आई वोक अप एंड आई
डू
वाज लाइक
अटेंड देम, डू अटेंड देम, डोंट वरी अबाउट दैट, हो जाएगा। यू आर जस्ट इन सेकंड ईयर, स्टार्ट अर्ली नाउ, and trust me, you will do it better.
थैंक
So
यू सो
anyone
मच।
else has any other questions? I think we should conclude this session over here.
थैंक यू सो मच।
Yeah, no problem, no problem. Suchana, thank you again for hosting the session, man.
Thanks.
Like I enjoyed doing everything. I don't know about the other guys. Like they're saying they enjoyed it. But anyway, yeah, I hope they learned a lot.
Would you be interested in hosting another session?
Yeah, definitely. I'm up for it.
Okay, then I'll let you know if others are interested.
Yeah, sure, definitely.
Okay, I just have one question
Okay.
from my side.
Yeah, bolo. Bolo.
Like you just said that you managed two full-time job roles while you were in a third and fourth year.
Yeah.
So like how were you able to do it? I mean, with college and everything going on, like did your
So
college
the
allow
thing
you?
is, yeah, in my first job, तो I had to go to Mumbai every 2 months for 1 week, 1 week के लिए. Baki time I had to do work from home. So what I used to do is I took my laptop to college. I went to the annex building of our college, which has, all the classrooms empty. I used to sit over there for the full day and do my full time का job. और अगर कोई important कुछ आता था तो my friends gave proxy for me, or most of the times we had our attendance through Google Forms, so it was really easy for us to.
हाउ डिड यू मैनेज द लैब्स?
Labs हो जाता था वो, ज्यादा वो अगर एक दिन पहले भी अगर पढ़ोगे तो हो जाएगा. Yeah. So yeah, any other questions, Suchana?
There.
All right then. Anyway, thank you guys. Thanks a lot. I hope we get another session, and I'll teach you guys a lot more back then. Okay?
Thank you.
Yeah.
थैंक यू, गुड नाइट।
Bye, guys. Good night. You're welcome. Bye.